But thank you for coming out this evening. My name is Candace Reese, and I am now working with the phenomenal Jarid Manos, author, activist, social transformation activist, actually, environmentalist, just all things wonderful. We've been all day traveling around, well, since he's been here Friday, going to schools and just really talking about doing some great work, the work that he's already doing and the work that he hopes to take on a national level. So I just want you to sit back and enjoy. I want to give him enough time to actually talk about his book, Ghetto Plainsman. It's his first literary contribution, and there's more to come, and I'm sure he's going to tell you more about that. So if you will welcome Jarid Manos.
How y'all doing? All right, I'm just going to do some readings and a discussion, and we'll just go like that. So let me ask you this. Let me ask you these two things. What do you think Sojourner Truth meant when she said, "It is the mind that makes the body"? Back on that. All right. Who remembers the '90s rap group Mobb Deep?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And they said, "There's a war going on. No man is safe from." So what do you think those three things have in common?
Black folks.
Even deeper in this. So, I used to be so alienated, so self-hating, and so hopeless that I was on my way out by the time I was 7. An excerpt from Ghetto Plainsman, passage in flight. Shivering and soaking wet, I drew the blade along the inside of my arm, staring at it with wide eyes. I tried to calm my breathing down. My belly jerked in and out. Slowly, I pressed the blade into my skin, trying to gauge at what point it would cut me. I desperately needed to push it all the way in. From out of nowhere, a thought came: you should take care of yourself. A door slammed and I jumped, cutting myself, not much, but enough to draw blood. I heard keys clatter on the kitchen table. Panicking, I quickly shut the bathroom door and locked it. Hurrying, I washed off the razor and put it back. I paced back and forth inside the tiny bathroom, unable to think, trapped. The window was small. I whirled around and caught the reflection of my small yellow body in the mirror. A tiny trickle of blood trailed down my arm. In the dull light, it looked almost black, like a perfect little snake slipping out of my arm. I pulled on my clothes, listened intently for the moment to escape. When I was sure, I slipped out and bolted back into the rain, down across the creek, across the overgrown field that used to be a garden, and into the woods. There's nothing that says you have to be a willing victim or accomplice in the killing of Earth and your future. Simply doing something changes everything. As you know, I'm Jarid, I'm author of Ghetto Plainsman. I'm also founder and CEO of Great Plains Restoration Council, which is a nonprofit that helps young people heal themselves through healing our stricken Mother Earth. And we look at problems of the body and the problems of our lives as one. And our two programs are Plains Youth Interaction and Restoration, Non-Incarceration. This book took me over 8 years to write, and I did that because I wanted to honor the reader's time. And I feel that it's important. A lot of times we don't honor the art process, or all art is communication. And I feel like if we're going to have somebody come on that journey with us, we should, definitely honor that. So, I've lived my entire life in the jungle. When I wear the streets and what's left of wild nature like I wear my senses and skin. My ears have even developed to be like a second pair of eyes, and I know when a shadow is not a shadow. When I say jungle, I don't mean the stereotypical trees and forests. I mean the physical and emotional jungle, the wild, untamed areas of our lives. I mean the edges also of America's hardened streets and America's abandoned, slow, open country, her lost plains, prairies, and deserts of the American West that few people give any attention to at all. Some people have heard me say, when I was little, I did not even realize that people had relationships. I thought people were just something that you had to get through. I didn't even know that people liked, loved each other and talked with each other like it was a perfectly normal thing. And later on, I became so angry. So I knew just 3 certain things in the world, and that was that everybody was a threat. Things were, the world was a hostile, dangerous place through people, and things were guaranteed to shift for the worse at any moment. That was my worldview. Also, on top of that, I had a deep self-hatred, which was overwhelming, mostly because of my biggest secret and worst, most hated fear of my orientation, but also because I sensed absolute meaninglessness in our existence. And so, inside all of this, there was this deeper foreboding, like an unformed awareness of the world dying around us, being killed, that we were inside an inevitable spiral of doom. So today, like, it's almost hard to believe that I was this like naive, inwardly scared country boy from the rural Midwest, because I have been through almost all the roughest hoods in the country now, and I know them just like anything. So it's my path today to becoming this nonprofit leader has been basically defined by 3 interlocking struggles. First, my struggle to stay alive when I so much wanted to die. Secondly, my struggle with anger and political militancy. And finally, my activist struggle to today, where I am constantly creating tangible proof that we can build a healthy, vital, creative future. I'm a vegan athlete, a green leader, literary author, youth activist, and a father. And really, to be honest with you, I should be out robbing and killing like everybody else. Criminals or corporations or whoever. And I certainly have enough reason not to give much of a crap about anybody. So if it hadn't been for the spiritual help from God and earth and insistent affirmations of random mamas, momentary grandmas, and instant brothers on the street, I wouldn't be here today. This is an excerpt from chapter 3. In the middle of some Memphis, Tennessee, chain-link, crack pavement wasteland with the interstate elevated and its traffic roaring overhead, I drove around a few blocks, legs cramped from the trip. I saw more factories and warehouses all closed for the weekend. The sky was overcast and the air southern grimy with vehicle soot and humidity. Parking next to an abandoned lot, its chain link fence sagging and torn, I got out, grabbed my bottle of warm 7-Up, and sank down onto a concrete parking bump. I folded my arms over my knees and dropped my head. Dimly, I heard the repeated slap of a basketball on the pavement and the boom of rap music. I looked up and watched 3 dudes playing ball, their shirts off, shiny with sweat. One was very big, tall, and dark-skinned. Mindlessly, I stared at his feet, running and jumping in bright white running DMC-style high-top sneakers. I was so tired, my mind drifted. I glanced up at the interstate that I just exited, looking at the rusted fence strung alongside tops of speeding vehicles visible behind. I had a sudden image of me being a little kid standing on the overpass above the new interstate in Ohio, my fingers twisting into the links of the already rusting fence that separated me from that freeway and its weed overgrown, trash littered slopes, and all the traffic passing beneath me going someplace, somewhere else. Does that work? I closed my eyes, remembering the dirty, warm, humid air, and now the gasoline-scented highway, how it had ruffled my wiry black hair. Sometimes I thought my head was like one of them blackbirds just wanting to lift off and fly away, my whole head flying away, clutched beneath wiry black wings. When they'd been building that interstate, they'd had dynamite days. They'd used bombs to open up the earth for the freeway's passage, and the whole kindergarten class had to gather in those safe areas of the school just in case anything shook loose on our heads. Winter caught up with the construction crews before they could finish, and every day after school, I rough sledded down into that giant, unfinished roadbed, bulldozed out of woods and old fields, the taste of snow in my nose. The basketball players decided to take a water break. After drinking from a gallon jug, the big dark dude came jogging out to where I was. I stood and leaned against the front of my car. Still a teen, I hadn't reached my full height yet. He ran up. He was maybe in his mid-20s. He glanced at the old maroon-colored Ford and its license plates. "So, haven't seen you around here before. You lost?" he asked. He was breathing through his nostrils, eyes flashing. I wanted to check into the motel, I said, but they say no overnight rates, not till 2 in the morning. He bounced the basketball. His bright blue gym shorts shined, so did his white sneakers, white teeth, and whites of his eyes. He was standing so close, he bounced the ball again. Nothing round here, he said, glancing back at his friends. This it. He looked at me for a second longer. I shrugged. So, from the rural Midwest to coastal South Texas to New York City and Los Angeles, for 2 years back and forth into the ravaged American Great Plains, I have repeatedly traded one jungle for the other. I settled in Corpus Christi, Texas, which they say is the real windiest city in America. North Beach was a seedy isthmus of dirt and sand, existing in the shadow of the arching harbor bridge just past the oil refineries that lined the shipping channel mouth of the Nueces River flowing into Corpus Christi Bay. I guess it's been redeveloped since, but back then, North Beach was its own forgotten sand and grit-blown beach hood. The winds would start blowing off the Gulf, and as I walked down through the dirt alleys, in between flapping clotheslines, yowling cats, and shawled Mexican grandmothers ducking like Arab women, I would begin to feel that the winds and sand were all there was in the world, or were the world itself, one long sand-blasted wind tunnel between shabby single-room hood houses and stick-stilted apartments that, no matter how many twists and turns, always led back out into the mouth of the giant, growling Gulf. Warm weather and the chance to live where the open ocean met the open west. The wind seemed strongest from late evening through the night. They would blow and creak and whistle and groan through the screens, coating my humid, naked sleeping body with fine dust and grit. This grit was something you could never fully shake or wash out of your sheets. There was always more, and it rasped against my nerve endings as I ground deeper into sleep. There was something toothy about North Beach, with its coarse, broiling sand and murky water, dead jellyfishes and broken glass, stingrays, incoming oil freighters, and shawled grandmas. Something about the changeable weather, sticky humidity, blazing sun, or damp gray, or open and dry, coastal prairie blue skies, and howling, grit-laden night winds. In fact, most of the South Texas Gulf Coast feels like this. Toothy, peeled raw like sand and salt rubbed into a sunburn. Not really a paradise or a vacation, but still always beckoning. And sometimes the winds would suddenly stop, completely pull back out to sea, and Corpus Christi Bay became flat as glass. I would dive into it, swimming far enough out to get naked. The Texas sun heated the top layer of water and made me perspire. Broiled by the sun, sweat piercing my shoulder blades as the cleaved water folded back in and over me like wings, I made sure my broad strokes broke only the slightest disturbance. Far enough out, I switched to breaststroke through the water's underpulse, and I was a sea snake, eyes and mouth barely breaking the surface. Sky meeting sea and me at water level, puffy clouds in the hot blue sky above, providing oasis pools on the water's surface. As I swam further, the nutrient-rich brown water deepened to blue-black, trailing out my breathing mouth. Down below, I knew there were things, big things, roiling in the cooling layers of water, that underpulse, rolling their eyes up at me as I passed overhead, sometimes bumping into my legs. I could see none of them. I was sure some came right beneath my belly before diving down again, and I might only feel them as a tendril of cooler water brought up with their momentum, or a swirl, or nothing at all. If I thought about it, it would scare me, and I quickly pressed the thought from my mind. Let the water pulse everything away but arm strokes and sea and sky. I could see straight out the mouth of the bay to the Gulf, all the way to forever, and that great plain of water pulled always. I swam more, floating if I got tired, silent gasps for air bubbles. I stopped and let my legs fall below me, treaded water. Civilization back there beyond the beach. Should I even go back? So, as I got out into the world, I tried to hold on, but extreme depression and self-hatred and this overbearing sense of hopelessness soon sunk me way below rock bottom. I even tried to go to school, but couldn't concentrate, couldn't stop passing out from an earlier head injury, and I fell further. And next thing I knew, I ended up in Los Angeles. I see somebody's new here. You beat me to my spot, he said, putting the end of the straw into his mouth. His tall boy can of Colt 45 was neatly covered inside a crisp paper brown bag. I didn't say anything. He had a yellowish white patch of hair. His lips were very dry and cracked, almost white. His dark bluish black hands were ashy as if dusted in the creases with white chalk. Black leather walking shoes were shined at first glance, masking the fact that they were old and worn. He saw me looking and said, "It'll always be the shoes. People always tell you always tell about you by your shoes." Or try to anyway. I shrugged. "How long you been here?" he asked. He cracked a friendly smile. I winced. His lips were so dry and peeling I thought they might split and start to bleed. "Just got here," I said. I looked out at the dirt parking lot where my car was standing by itself. Most people in my apartment building didn't have a car. "Well, you found the spot." "Sure did. This is the Grand Central of downtown Hollywood, that's for sure. At least for us homeless cats. Though I wouldn't stay here at night. You found it, I bet, probably your first day, huh? Congratulations. Wilcox has always been the spot, especially this block between Sunset and Hollywood." He laughed. "What you mean?" I said. "I'm going to stay here tonight." "You're crazy when there are so many other places. This is only a place to come to during the day. At night, you don't even have to go to a nasty shelter. This is LA, where it's endless summer." "But I can't get away all my secrets." "But nobody stays here at night. Too many gangs and thugs and the police and the ghetto birds, son." He stuck his finger straight up at the sky. I wrinkled my eyebrows at him and curled my lip. "I live here, just moved here, in this apartment building." He made a small laugh like a cough. "Ooh, cough. All right, sorry. Oh well, better than you than me, I guess. What they charging you, 150? 175? He put out his hand. "I'm Bones. They call this Bones Alley," he said, nodding to the alley to the left. I thought about it for a second. "Jihad," I said, slitting my eyes. We shook hands. Not able to stay in any one place for long, soon I was in a last-ditch gasp to avoid homelessness on the New York City streets. So with no other option, I had to even sell myself at one point, and it was really like one of the most hardest things. It was one of the most catastrophically violating things, and luckily it wasn't a long time. But strangely, at the same time, I started to become politically aware. I'd be crashing out on a park bench, sitting or sleeping on newspapers, to keep from getting wet. You know how it is in New York, just like that. And I started reading my bed, and I realized that the official word of the world wasn't exactly what I was seeing all around me. I also learned to read between the lines of what even biases of getting to know certain writers and saying, well, there's a political slant on that. So it opened my mind more. I became an information junkie, and I felt a new anger forming. Like I said, the official word wasn't the official reality of what was going on. And these were the days of the Persian, Exxon Valdez oil spill and the Persian Gulf War, which the Tiananmen Square massacre. It was like the Black Spring of 1989. My increasingly unsettling experiences out in the American West, where I was becoming aware of severe destruction beneath the fabled myth of the cowboy and the so-called Wild West. So anger boiling over, bottomed out, a sudden opportunity to deal drugs presented itself, and seeing the world as a war zone, I said, all's fair in hate and war. Aside from that, there really wasn't any moral equivocation there. So, like I said, it wasn't really a big thing. Subconsciously, I already saw myself as a criminal, an outcast to society. Someone who lived underground, second class on the edges, and someone who was followed, stopped, hunted, and harassed all the time. Always by cops and pursuing old men and people trying to run you down with their trucks and cars and others. Everybody in my mind, so it was an easy thing for me to grow into becoming Angry Jihad, my longtime nickname, this politically militant drug dealer who is going to fund his own war against all the destroyers and get involved in street protests and sabotage, like cutting down barbed wire fences and other things like that against who I consider the destroyers out west. This is an excerpt from right during the protests after the Highway of Death after the Persian Gulf War was ended, and they just, had a video game and shot the rest of them. We didn't even have shoes. The shiny 7th-8 crescent wrench had a nice heft in my hand. I holstered it into the back pocket of my jeans. I expected goons, rednecks, bat-wielding dudes from New Jersey, and worse, hundreds of thousands of them foaming at the mouth with racist war frenzy during their victory celebration. The wrench was innocent enough, just going to help my girl work on her apartment officer, and strong enough for some head-thudding protection if it came down to that. Better than my knife, which I was going to leave in my room. What was I going to do anyway? Stab these rednecks as they came at me? I pulled the Hanes tank on, tied my boots, folded the navy blue bandana into a square and tucked it all the way down into my left front pocket and pulled the big floppy thug hat over my head. Picking up the white t-shirt that I painted front and back the night before, I carefully folded it lengthwise and slung it over my shoulder. Checking myself in the mirror, I agreed I looked dangerous enough. And I got out this little square box. I got out the little square box that was my home, Hotel Hell in Uptown where I had finally moved. Noticing I picked up the New York Hood Rat's gait, the confident roll and drag that become a regular part of my walk. How long had it been like that? I made it over to Broadway at 103rd in the one train going down to the World Trade Center. It was such a nice sunny morning, I decided to walk the extra blocks down to 96 and get the express. Still good for time, I changed at 14th and then make it down. The big ugly celebrations for the war would just be starting, would last for hours. On the train, I sat down and looked over the t-shirt in my hand. On the back, hand-painted in black letters, it said, polarization, confrontation, damn straight. Compromise? Ha! Too late. Time to realize the real war begins now. Slowly. Slowly, surely, and by any means necessary. 5 bloody boot holes were painted on for added effect, and on the front it said, what goes around comes around. And I had a little yellow smiley face next to that. So, in earnest now, I began searching for that one safe place, one remaining untouched place. If the world was a total war zone, this one safe place out in nature, in the American West. Like I said, I had this idea. I was going to go and find this, and then I was going to leave everything, all the chaos behind. But let me tell you, when I tell you of my despair, of my descent into the outback of American Great Plains, the last frontier of American violence, of the damage, of the utter horror, of my utter horror of how much bloodshed, suffering, and sorrow has been waged against our prairie earth animals and even Earth herself, it flipped the script. You know, people from the inner city think, people think the inner city is a war zone, but the hood became a safe place, and I actually was still in many ways, because you get breaks rather than that pall of that hatred that I think that still exists in many places, this 1870s mentality. It made, like, you know, Murder Row seemed like more of like the safe area compared to that.
Say that.
So, you know, and you know, this may partly because Earth is an extension of my body, so her ravaging left me wretched with pain and despair. And I don't see my life as just for myself. So, no safe place, no refuge, and nature was a landscape of pain. It almost killed me in a new way. I couldn't eat. I really started to just I really was, you know, and like I said, I've come close to death several times. And I felt my life dying, coming out of me another time. Excerpt from chapter 14, Prairie Earth. In South Dakota, I walked under the low sailing gray skies, letting the winds push me. A few songbirds blew across my path. I thought I might just fall away. At some point, making no more than half a mile further, I was down. On my back in the raw, punched, grassy dirt, I stared up at the sky, stem of grass between my teeth. My hurt arm, my broken arm, lay in its frozen crook position on top of my belly. Some dude had run me off the road with his truck. Black clouds were undercutting the gray ones up above as the winds continued to battle, and surely a big storm was about to happen. But it seemed too gentle, too quiet. Weren't prairie storms supposed to be giant, crashing, end-of-the-world deluges? I drifted off, opening and closing my eyes. Soon I smelled ozone as the first few drops of rain fell, and I heard them plop into the white dust near my ears. A drop here, a drop there, on my face, on my bare chest through the opening in my shirt. I closed my eyes, ready for it all. Another drop clipped onto my eyelid, and it rolled down my face into my ear canal. Soon, I knew for sure, the giant skies would have to tear open. Come on. Wind in my ears like an empty bottle. My stomach rose and fell with my breathing, pushing my slung arm up too. I waited, excited. Time passed. Suddenly, like a giant vacuum, the wind stopped. I opened my eyes, questioning. The sky had flattened out to a bare, overcast gray. The drops no longer fell. Everything grew silent, even my breath, which was barely there now. A rooted, spidery hand of warmth reached up into my back from the ground and seemed to pause there, grasping me, pressed by the weight into the grass and dirt. The warmth spread deeper up into me, moving around as if checking things out, then spilled into my right shoulder, which had been just practically torn off. I opened my eyes, listening intently. I could hear nothing. So I became obsessed with this American violence that I was finding out there on the landscape. You know, like I said, people think that it's a pristine wilderness, but if you look closer, you will see prairie dog killing contests, government agents and private citizens shooting hundreds of thousands of wild animals from planes and helicopters. And the land is strung up in bristling wires, and you may see paintings, but if you look deeper, it's a landscape of pain. You know, I even went to jail for locking down a line of a prairie dog killing contest on the border of Colorado and Kansas. And I began to wonder if my backlash, hatred, and anger against all the destroyers made me a little different from them. So as I began to have more fully developed feelings, something new, the human world began pressing its warmth in, new real feelings, and it was a really beginning of something, because when all I had known was ugliness, I began to see my own ability where I was to interact with others, that there was more to us than just this war, just this endless. I began to see the value in people as well. So there I was, Earth was dying, animals were dying, and finally I began to see that people are dying, and I felt like a whole future was being defined by all this constant battle, this struggle, and I just couldn't accept it. Began taking better care of myself, to move slowly and gradually and actually strongly into a plant-based diet. I'm a vegan now, and you know, one of the things that Malcolm X said, there's only one cause, and that's the oppressed against those that do the oppressing. And I thought, well, how much of that, taking a step further, how much are we repressing ourselves by being not well or giving into the definitions that we're handed to of our lives? So I realized I loved, and I realized that I can evolve, and I'm still trying to be on my path moving forward. But that's as I said, once I survived my own life, what else was there for me to do but give back? And 12 years later, my organization, Great Plains Restoration Council, runs 2 programs to help youth, and we've created 3 new parks, safe places that practically worth close to $30 million, and came right off the curve. It's still a pretty cash poor, but a lot of hard work and a lot of commitment to not giving in to hopelessness and despair and the culture of perfectly acceptable violence as normal behavior. And I'm on my journey still. I'm still a really imperfect person, but you know, that's really where I'm at. So I thank you for your time, and I'm here for questions. Does anybody have any questions?
Hey, one question. Where are you actually from in Ohio?
I was in the middle part of it, moved around a little bit in Liberty.
Oh.
And so that was just when I was born, but I came to Texas when I was little, and then I ended up in New York.
What's
Yes.
What's the reaction of the young people that you work with when you share this story?
Well, it's it's the idea of the need for refuge is pretty strong for people. People really attach to that, you know. So it's pretty powerful. you know, and if I can move that into tangible things that people can do, steps. I've created the 12 steps of ecological health. I was inspired by Dr. King's 6 steps to nonviolent social change. So I looked at my life and everything I've learned, and over a course of years, I created 12 components of ecological health. And we got to stop thinking of the earth and, you know, just everything in objectified relationships, or everything is just there. We treat our bodies like it's just there. We treat Mother Earth like it's just there. We treat a lot of times with each other, just everything is just profane. But you know, I try to, in my own streetwise way, I try to live a little bit more of a, you know, a spiritual or sacred type existence. It's just, you know, none of this stuff up here, but really grounded. You know what I mean? Just things that mean more and that feel right and that are really embedded from here all the way through my body and soul.
I'm from Ohio, and I may have missed it, but I've heard that you had a lot of experiences, but what was your worst experience?
I mean, it's been a long time since I think that it was just being, because I was pretty much, I'd be on my bike or whatever, and would be, sometimes in the park, it would be the people harassing me, stalking me, old men, and, you know, lurking or whatever like that. I mean, I'm blessed. I've lived the easiest, happiest life compared to so many others. So I could be in Somalia, or I could. I mean, I saw somebody whose body ends here, and they have to use their arms as ski poles, and they have a skateboard on them. So, you know, even when I haven't had, you know, very many, you know, when I fell further down into like poverty and stuff, I still know that I'm blessed, you know, and I wasn't too caught up in my own stuff, but.
Let me ask you an environmental question. I'm Jan Sykes, and we have with us our environmental director, who can probably talk about how we would like to see you work with some of us in Atlanta.
Right.
But we've been doing some specific things, and I'm gonna call him out, Daryl. You connecting yet? You connecting yet, Daryl?
Well, what's interesting?
What's up,
what's interesting is we know each other, and he actually spoke and did the presentation at the Outdoor Activity Center on Friday, and so our plans are obviously to connect his program in Texas with youth, and kind of creating this family of inner city youth that can get this experience across the board.
I just wanted you on tape.
Right. And we have committed to doing a Spelman and Morehouse alternate spring break, where they're going to come out to our 20,000 acre coastal Prairie new restoration site. We help support our young people, because it's not just youth, but young adults in restoration, not incarceration. And this type of work where you can really utilize nature as a therapeutic modality to help people really dig into some really hardcore problems. I mean, I've really been working and tweaking that, and now we're layering social workers in hospital and university researchers to put some that imprimatur, is that the way, you know, that additional level onto it. You know, and we also need to, like, you'll hear me say this before, we need to live our lives like a living art project, because they are. It's not, our lives aren't just a series of mechanical equations. You know, we're full of flesh and blood, culture and soul, and you know, really big feelings. And so it's good to inhabit that and channel that forward, you know, into something that's, I feel like we're really at a really serious time. I feel like protecting the earth is a civil right and responsibility, and I feel like protecting the earth is a crucible and a sacrament, because protecting the earth is protecting our children's health and future. Body and earth are one and the same. The spirit is part of the flesh, you know, while we're here, and it's, you know, your next breath could ripple across 5,000 years and you don't even know it. Or you could just be passive and watch everything collapse in 50 years.
Would you do a little bit more about the coastal restoration? Some of us come from the coastal area, Gulf of Mexico, Mississippi, all of that. And I think in Atlanta, there's not always a vision of how all that area, that whole coast, you know, really affects the rest of us. Right.
Well, I mean, it's it's really sort of, in 1528, I mean, there's a cultural story too. Everybody heard of Esteban the Moor? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, Esteban the Moor, he was a Moroccan slave that was to Andres Dorantes and Cabeza de Vaca and several shipwrecked Spanish conquistadors, and they washed ashore the last survivors onto Galveston Island. And it was the first, it was contact. It was like, but it was the first like non-Indian contact. But what was really interesting about the story, some people said they were children of the sun because it was a Garden of Eden at that point. And here you had people, and he was helped facilitate relationship between the conquerors who were now be equals to those who already lived there, like the Carancos or some of the Atacape, the people who lived in the coastal prairie. And it's really lush, healthy, everything you could ever need, eat. And for 8 years they lived as, you know, as part of the land, and it was a perfect example of how we could develop civilization, proposing rather than imposing. Of course, the other road was taken, but now there's less than 1% left. The Karanka people were killed to extinction. And there is an exit off of I-45 going north called the Kirkendall exit, but General Kirkendall is the one who killed them all, the last of them. You know, sometimes we don't even look at the names, but a lot of the names in this country are part of that story. And I'm really, I'm a huge fan of Toni Morrison, because she's so pungent in her writing, and I feel like she really is, she really gets the story, the American story of people on the land. And I will just take it to say that like pavement is part of the landscape too. You know, even if we're in the city or whatever, I don't feel like we're separate from nature or the world or our bodies even as a health advocate. So that real participation in our lives is something that I try to integrate. Now there's, like I said, less than 1% left of the coastal prairie. And when you visualize what it was like here where the prairie met the sea, you know, two halves of a whole, original fertility, you know, they're strung all along the Gulf Coast from Louisiana down to about Mexico, and then so much of it has been ripped up. And but when you find little parts of it, it's like stepping into a whole different place because it's so lush, and every step of the way is full of life. We're in a race to save it from extinction, and I know that like in my county, Harris County, we're also have our county jail alone is overcrowded with over 10,000 inmates. You know, mostly more than half of them low-level offenders. Someday, maybe even beyond my lifetime, this program and this application will allow people to be really engaged in a deep restoration, because this work can be used to reduce recidivism or just help people get healthy. We've even expanded the work for people outside, like youth or young adults, to a new program called Your Health Outdoors, because even foundation executives have asked us if they could come out. So I just, to youth and young adults, and when you guys come, I mean, I want y'all to, you know, carry on this mission and movement even past, you know, I mean, I'm pointing to you, especially, you know, but everybody, because I've already lived my life. I've lived more than twice my life, and I'm not going to be here forever. And so we need a nation of workers, like, real soon.
Said like you have gray hairs already.
I'm talking about, I feel like, you know, it's like, I'm just saying, like, you know, I mean, I've already been right at that edge many times. I mean, I probably should have died when I cracked my head open the first time when I was 3. And so, I'm just saying, you know, I'm just saying, you know, I could get shot through the head or hit by a truck tomorrow, and it would be the perfectly normal thing.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of follow up on the
But
question.
that's my life, you know, I mean.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on the question with a short comment, and that is, one of the interesting things about the program is that we're taking it beyond just community service, or Jared is taking it beyond community service. You know, this is actually making a mind-body connection with the environment. And so where generally people traditionally have said this is service learning, or this is community service, or this is, you know, doing some kind of beautification project, you know, we're actually starting to take a deeper dive that's going to cause us to actually look at what we're calling environment and environmental advocacy.
And that's so objectifying too, rather than like, you know, I mean, even our language, you know,
Exactly.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so I think that that's why this is going to be transformational. this is going to be transformational because we won't just think of doing environmental restoration or beautification or community service in silos. We're going to start linking it together.
Right. And you can really work with some people who have had extreme personal problems. I have worked with some people. One of my former crew members, my last year's crew members, he was always in danger of hanging himself. He came and finally told me that, and it allowed, he said it really had helped him. You can apply this even in a prescriptive way. That's why we really want to dig in deeper and work with the professionals, partnering with the social workers and people in the medical field, because we've seen it work anecdotally. Now we need to layer in some really serious research and further application. And we talk about your shatter moment where young people or anybody feels like, I can't make it through the next moment, and then we break and we do something harmful. But out there working in the hot and cold and making something meaningful of your life, like growing and providing refuge again, healing, being part of that, tearing out that angry, snarled up, claustrophobic, all the invasive species or weeds that choke up the landscape, and bringing back health, you're tearing that out of yourself too. And so next time you have that crisis moment, you might find that you're going to have additional skills, because I have a background, once I in between coming up off of every dealing and all that, I lost everything, by the way. It was like, so I ended up, I had made a little bit of money, but I wasn't buying BMWs or gold chains. I was on a one-way thing, but I ended up losing it anyway, so I worked in a juice bar and then moved into physical therapy and then personal training. And I really saw how the problems of the body and the problems of the earth are like one. So I've been developing this application of healing, so you can be tactical. We don't have to be visitors.
As you pointed out, with going on a deeper level and the spirituality aspect of it, can you speak to how that, this transformation for you, how that affects how you engage with others, no matter what their orientation, no matter what issues they may have? How do the programs that you actually have implemented, how do they help us engage better and realize that we are part of the, one body, as same as we're connected with others?
Well, we look at, we say ecology is the final and greatest social struggle because it demands the interconnectedness of all living things. So you can, sometimes, the diversity of life is really something we should celebrate. And you can utilize a path to acceptance or even self-acceptance doesn't happen overnight, and no matter what is going on, it's a matter of, a lot of times people are looking for that one moment, that lightning bolt moment, but I haven't found like that so much. You may have awakenings, but I find that you get to places by being on that path, and you're in places, little places all along that. I'm still, I'm on my own path to self-acceptance, and even sometimes I'm, moody still, but I'm supposed to be always, sometimes I'm supposed to be really a strong, always positive, upbeat person, always insist upon the ultimate goodness of people, but behind the scenes, I guess, every day I hear so much bad news, and sometimes it can get me down, but I'm a fitness freak. I'm like, I use working out and running and swimming and jumping rope and whatever else, climbing the stairs part, to manage that. I just want people to be stronger and not give up hope. And I also want people to celebrate life, because I've seen a lot. Even out in the West, I would see animals who've been here for 1,000,000 years, who have their own culture, like prairie dogs, for 1,000,000 years. And it's almost like this. It's like that Dr. Seuss story, Here's a Who. We are here, we are here. It's like they have, when you pay attention, they speak a language. It's almost like they're aliens, but they're so intelligent. And they have been attacked with so much racial hatred to just wipe them out, because the livestock industry doesn't want them, and so violently. It's like, I will still see them worship the sun every morning when they get up. And it's like, you can be informed by that. In the midst of constant, unrelenting hatred and danger, you can still celebrate life. And so I accept the acknowledgement of problems, I don't accept the problems. That was my biggest difference.
So when will you come back to Atlanta to the Outdoor Activity Center so we can spend a week?
We'll work it out.
Hey, well, I love my Atlanta friends, and you know, I'm really trying to build a national movement. So I think what we're first starting with is you know, Houston and Atlanta, and finding ways to interchange this upcoming next year, spring break. But we'll do lots of things before then. But I think that big flagship project will be great for to tell. I want this work to help the country tell its own story, and it can look at, you know, all these issues that whether it's climate change or homophobia or just helplessness or, you know, whatever, loss, whatever. You can find there's a lot of interest in the intersection of our most pressing social issues, and so we want to be on the forefront of that and help new people lead in that. Help people who are service recipients become service providers.
On behalf of the staff here at Albany, now, you know, we definitely want to extend you